and bright stars through the perilous light. For the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and rockets regular, the bombs bursting up, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Welcome to Homeland Heroes Salute Podcast with your hosts, Doug Macedo, Jim Roba, Ginger Mudson, and David Tilley.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Homeland Heroes Salute. I'm your host, Doug, and we've got a special guest here with us today. He's not a veteran, but he worked closely with everybody that was a veteran, but I'm going to let Scott introduce himself, and we'll go on with the show. Take it away, Scott.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Scott, Doug, and thanks for having me on the show. I was lucky enough to do some teaching and traveling with the Coast Guard and other military people back in 2007 to 2013. From 2007 to 2010, I was teaching for Endicott College. We were offering college courses for credit at various bases around the Boston area, most commonly at the Coast Guard base in the North End. And in 2010, I had the privilege of going out on my first cutter patrol, where we had a semester at sea program through Endicott College, and we ended up doing 14 patrols at sea. It was a great experience.
Why is it so accurate? That's I've never been on cutters before, but I've always heard of friends of mine that are in the Coast Guard or even in the Navy. They're like, dude, you got to get onto a boat. I'm like, I would love to. I said, let's get me on one. No, not yet. But,
well, I gotta tell you, I had never been on a boat that size in January 2010, and I was standing in the Coast Guard. I was at the Coast Guard base in Boston, and I talked to a commander, and I don't remember his name, but he knew that I was going out in January. It was probably late December, and he came up to me and he said, "You ready to go?" I said, "Yes, sir. I think I am." He said, "Well, be sure to eat a full breakfast before you roll out of there on." That morning, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And I took his advice, and sometimes the full breakfast worked, and sometimes it didn't. But it was always an experience.
Did you get seasick?
Not that time, Doug. But the second time I rolled out, we were leaving out of Boston, I believe, and the waters were really rough. And I was laying in my rack. And the boat was tossing and turning, and the corpsman came up to my room and said, "Hey, how you doing, Professor?" And I said, "Well, I'm having kind of a rough time, sir." And he said, "Well, here, take some of this." And he gave me some Dramamine. And ever since then, I really didn't have a problem after that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's very unique with some of that stuff. And I've been out sea fishing, on a 20-foot, 20 to 60-foot boats. Deep sea fishing, but I've never been on the bigger ships, and I'm like, even my cousin says, when he was in as he was in the Navy, he was like, dude, you can go play hide and seek in the engine area. And I'm like, are you serious? He goes, yeah. He goes, that's like the best part of it. He goes, there's so many places to hide. I'm like, dude, this is amazing.
Well, it's funny. The 270s are they seem real big at first, but they're not that big. There's a 100-person crew on each cutter, and they're unique boats, and it does not do well in big seas. We were leaving the weekend Hurricane Sandy hit, or that week Hurricane Sandy hit back in whatever year that was. We were scheduled to leave Boston and head to, I believe we were headed down to the Caribbean. And so I can't remember if we were just going to New York, but we ended up in New York Harbor for like 2 or 3 days right after Sandy.
Yeah.
And we were the only boat out there because the whole harbor was closed. And we were just kind of floating around, and they kind of made a media event of it out there and brought out the PR people.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, that was a tough ride because that boat was being tossed and turned like a toy boat in a bathtub.
I can just imagine. I mean, I just being out on out deep sea fishing myself.
Yeah.
Other boats, it's like, dude, it's like you feel every good wave out there, and it's not too pleasant, and I think I got sick quite a few times, and so I've always had to have the little patch just behind my ear.
Yeah.
I still got sick. It didn't matter. I'm like,
I think everybody handles the seasick. I think it affects people differently. I only had those 1 or 2 times where it affected me, and I never wore a patch, and I never really had to take the medication again.
yeah.
But each patrol is different.
Yeah.
I just told you about some of the rough times. Some of the more serene and truly beautiful times are when you're out in the middle of the Caribbean or out in the Atlantic Ocean. In the middle of the night, on a cloudless night, you look up and you see so many stars. You're up in New Hampshire. I'm sure you see more stars than I do down here in South Jersey. But when you're out in the middle of nowhere with no artificial light, it's pretty beautiful.
Oh, it really is. When you have like literally no street lights or anything like that. Like I live, in Massachusetts. Well, I live not that far from New Hampshire, but even when I'm living where I live in Massachusetts, I still go out and I have no. Whole lot better, and stuff like that.
It's so beautiful.
It is. It's amazing, and even when it comes to when you're waking up in the morning, it's even the sunrise is a whole.
Oh my God!
It's
so gorgeous.
Oh, I'll tell you, it's like the photos that I've taken with my drone or even with my camera. It's amazing. It's absolutely gorgeous. So
I think I was only teaching 1 or 2 classes. I think I probably taught 3 classes at patrol, and but the crew members on board were excited, and I had a lot of people sign up, and we really had a ball. We were out in the North Atlantic that first patrol on fisheries patrols, making sure that the captains out there were fishing for fish that they were legally licensed to fish for, and they had they had legal crew and all that stuff, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But and after that, I had the experience because that patrol was successful. Then it built on the other 4 cutters that were ported in New England, in Kittery, Maine, or Portsmouth, New Hampshire, whatever they call that base up there.
Yeah.
And the one in Boston, all 5 cutters. I ended up sailing with all 5 cutters. And it was just a great experience because each command is different.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about leadership. Every one of those commanders had their own style.
Yeah.
And all those patrol and all those crews worked really. I never realized how hard Coast Guard people would work. From the training to the to the boardings and when we were down south doing migrant patrols and stuff. It was just one of the most fantastic experiences I've ever had.
Yeah. No, I can just imagine, and it's still the to be able to be a part of that and be able to experience. It's like anything in the military. It's like, to experience something like that. It's just it feels different, and you feel, it's like you feel proud with a lot of the stuff you do, and it's absolutely I think it's breathtaking when you get to experience certain things, and again something like that, it's breathtaking.
Absolutely.
So, as one of the questions I wanted to ask is, can you share some of the most significant challenges that you've faced during your time with training the military personnel, even at from the beginning, from the beginning of it to the time that you got done, and how did you overcome any of those challenges?
Well, Doug, I got to tell you, I appreciate the question because there were a lot of challenges. I was going out there. Especially, I mean, I had a lot of support on land, and I had some support on the ships, of course.
Yep.
But essentially, I was the only civilian on board every single one of those patrols, and I had to kind of, make a name for myself. I had to prove myself, and I had to prove that I was capable of doing what I promised, what we promised to deliver.
Yeah.
In a method that my students could understand and learn from and enjoy at the same time. When they're out there working on a working cutter for 30 to 60 days, they're working hard, 12, 14, 16 hours a day sometimes.
Yeah.
And for a professor to come aboard and say, "Hey, here's some class, here's here's some courses we're offering you. You're not really going to pay much,
Yeah.
The GI Bill at the time was taking care of all that, or pretty much most of it. But the challenge was teaching at sea with different commands, in sometimes really rough conditions, sometimes crazy training conditions or operations conditions. I can't tell you how many times I was in the middle of a class session where we had to abruptly cancel because something was going down.
Yeah.
Or other things. I mean, it's a working environment. But I always felt privileged and very grateful that these commands would invite me on board to offer this service to their crew members. I thought it was great, and some commanders were easier to work with than others. Some guys were really cool, and some of the commands were just great and really helpful, and others were just kind of like, well. I mean, they were busy with their own stuff, and I never judged any of them. But it was. I mean, I had my favorites. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's something that you have to be able to juggle both. The learning, teaching part, of the career, but also, hey, they have their duties that they normally have to do, and if something comes up, you've got to be able to stop at that point. They go take care of and do whatever they need to do, and then turn around and say, okay, we're going to pick up now where we left off, or maybe we may have to backtrack a little bit just to give you a little refresher to get you to remember some of it, to then be able to proceed with it, and hopefully that nothing came up again. But again, military life, it does happen.
There were a lot of challenges in terms of just logistics. For example, and I'll tell you something else that was a real challenge in the beginning. I always assumed, I naively assumed that if you get on a ship in 2010, that you're going to have those satellites up there will be able to blaze your internet, take care of your internet no matter where you are. Well, that didn't always work out, as I'm sure you're aware.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes you're out there and the satellite would go down, or the ship's function to connect to the satellite would go down.
Yeah.
And my first patrol out there, Doug, talk about a challenge. I was teaching an online course out of Boston at the same time I was going out on this patrol. And I thought, I can manage this. I've got the internet. I've got some free time. I'm only teaching a couple it wasn't that big of a schedule, that first patrol.
Yeah.
And I thought I could manage it, but we were out there. Everything went fine the first 3 or 4 days, and then the internet went down.
Yeah.
And I couldn't. I lost contact with my students online. And when that contact was reestablished, I got an earful.
Yeah.
And so after that, when I would go out at sea, I would have no obligations on land. It was just because it was too unpredictable.
Yeah. No, I mean it is, because it's again, you never know when you will have that monkey wrench thrown into the whole thing, and that's it. It happens. I can't tell you how many times things have had to be put to the wayside because, because maybe the internet's not there, or maybe the radio communication is not up because, again, satellite is being interrupted by some sort of problem that's taking place. You may only have radio communication for, say, 3 hours out of a 24-hour period. Well, okay, well, what are we supposed to do? So, again, it happens. It's something that the monkey wrench does get thrown in there, and you got to adapt and overcome and proceed still with the objective goal at that point.
Yeah.
So.
And other than those, I mean, there were plenty of challenges. Just trying to get all that work done within a very short period of time, and holding students accountable while they're also working very difficult jobs on the ship.
Yeah.
A lot of them some of them, I allowed a couple guys to take more than, I think a couple guys wanted to sign up and take all 3 courses that first patrol. On several patrols, I had a lot of over enthusiastic students who bit off a little bit. Sometimes they bit off more than they could chew, and then we'd have to make adjustments.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, I can honestly tell you, despite those challenges, I never worked with a better bunch of people in my life. Honest to God, they were great in every sense. They were accommodating, they were challenging, they were thoughtful, great students, and just a really good experience all around.
And that's amazing. Again, it's something that we always like to hear. And I mean, again, not trying to boast or have that big head of being a military person, but when you put a group of military men and women into a classroom or a learning environment, sometimes you will see the difference between a regular civilian college individual that is going to classes and learning. They have a different look at life, different than the military person does, and they
absolutely
act different.
I think one of the benefits of working with the military, as I did those 6 years, was just what you said. A lot of these guys, especially some of I had chiefs in my class. I even had a couple. I had warrant officers in my class that would come in and just take a course.
Yeah.
It's not like it was going to further. They were already pretty far along in their career, but they were interested in that college experience.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was also a very interesting dynamic. The relations between the various sectors on those ships. You had the command, you had the ensigns and the officers, and then you had the chief petty officers, and then you had all those people that the enlisted, the first and second and thirds, that all worked hard, and they all. I mean, there were clearly some differences in the chain of command and the way things that not everybody got along on those boats sometimes, but the work got done, and I think that the command, some of them were better than others at making sure morale was up in difficult times or whatever. But for the most part, that one of the most interesting things to me about the whole experience was just learning about the various strata of responsibility and strata of accountability on those ships.
Yeah. No, I mean, it really is. And now I've got to ask, before I go into more, did you eat with the lower enlisted, or did you eat with the NCOs, or did you eat with more of the officers?
That's a really good question. And I had the privilege of pretty much hanging with the officers whenever I wanted.
Yeah.
I mean, they considered me part of the officer
like family.
contingency
Yeah.
for the most part. But a lot of times, because my students were eating out in the galley or eating in the chief's mess, I spent
Yep.
a lot of time out there too. So I kind of like made my rounds around. I wanted to kind of get to know everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a diplomat at heart, I think, and that helped me kind of. I mean, I'm more of an extrovert than an introvert, and I think that helped me, establish me as a credible, a credible and likable person aboard the ships. I'd like to think that anyway.
Perfect. I mean, that's what it should be, and I
Yeah.
never looked at saying, hey, yes, the military people have, the NCO, club. They had the officers club, and it was like,
Yeah.
okay, how about just have one club for everybody, and if
Yeah,
you want to
man.
hang out.
Yeah.
And then if you want to have an NCO club and an officers club, just in case you want to have a calm time, then have it. But again, they didn't like a lot of fraternizing with, lower enlisted, and it's like, how are you supposed to be able to intermingle with one another and be able to have that come to Jesus moment, as I say, to be able to see and how they, act, when they're just relaxing as themselves instead of just being kind of uptight individuals. So again, I'm like always like, just intermingle with one another, and not that you have to do it every single day, day in, day out. You get your own time, but again, intermingle and have that kind of fraternizing, just not how some of them say it, as like a relationship, like a dating relationship, not have that, kind of, fraternizing, but, still have to be able to have that time with the soldiers to be intermingling with one another.
It makes a lot of sense. I've always, believed that in order to create a working team, and we talked a lot about leadership in those classes. I ended up teaching a critical thinking class those last few patrols, and a lot of that course focused on leadership and leadership style, and I think I seem to recall, I know I did this a few times. For the final exam for that course, it was essay. I would say, okay, well, I would give them a lot of it was built around training. I mean, there was stuff going on right there on the boat that required critical thinking. These guys were trained, and sometimes the training didn't go well, and then they had to kind of, reverse engineer the whole process.
Yeah.
And as you well know, and so we spent a lot of time talking about leadership and values and things like that, and that's not something. You kind of, sometimes it's, there's debate about whether or not that sort of stuff should be talked about in a classroom. But I think it's really important to talk about that stuff in a classroom.
I mean, I would think so. Again, it's something that, people should be able to experience that and be able to have that kind of relationship, to a officer, to, lower enlisted, or to an NCO, just so you have that kind of feeling.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, I did, like I said earlier, I taught a math class, a college math class, which was basically a remedial, not remedial, but it was like an intro to more advanced mathematics. It wasn't anything that difficult by any stretch of the imagination, but it was enough to give the guys, to kind of shake them up and kind of get their brains back in the math mode. And and in that particular class, sometimes 22, 23 people would be in there, and we would hold some of the courses in the wardroom.
Yeah.
Although the location of the courses, class sessions on the ship, would sometimes bounce around from the chief's mess to the wardroom to the crew barracks or whatever, because you wanted to kind of spread the wealth around, or spread the burden around. But anyway, in that particular math class that I'm thinking of, I had a couple chiefs, I had some first class petty officers, I had some second, thirds, and I think I even had a warrant officer in there. So in those particular courses that I offered on the cutters, you would often get a cross mix of people in there that might not normally work together on the ship.
Yeah.
And I like to think it kind of created more of it strengthened that sense of community that's crucial on a ship like that when you're out for 30 to 60 days or 90 days.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And that brings me into my other question. My second question to you is, how was your career, in this civilian set as a civilian, but with dealing with the military, influenced your approach to leadership and teamwork, in both your professional and your personal life.
Well, it's had a strong imprint on me, particularly because I sailed with I've known a lot about leadership. I've worked with some really good people. I've worked for some really good people, and during those 13 patrols on those cutters, like I said, I got a real good cross section of leadership styles,
Yeah.
and I guess one of the things I learned I had a couple favorite commanders, and I'm not going to name them for fear of, not recognizing somebody I should recognize. But there were a couple guys out there that were really cool and really went that extra mile.
Yeah.
To do some morale things on their boats, and build morale and to make it more fun for the crew, because it's not all fun out there when you're working. You're away from your families, you're away from your friends.
Yeah.
By the 7th or 8th day at sea, you're not eating the best. All the good food's gone, and you know what I mean. It's like it gets difficult. But one of the guys I worked with, one of the commanders I worked with, in fact, him, we talked about him earlier, Jim Spots.
Yep.
He one of the greatest guys I ever met. I have no problem saying that, because he knew how to keep his crew motivated.
Yeah.
A couple times during the patrol, he would go down there with a bunch of seaweed and sushi and just roll that stuff up and be a sushi chef for the whole crew.
Yeah.
One night patrol, and the guys loved it. But I think it's hard for those guys, particularly the leadership, because you kind of got to be a babysitter. You definitely have to be a manager, but sometimes you got to be a friend too, because life gets tough out there.
No,
And it's just, I saw some guys have some real struggles out during those longer patrols, and particularly some of the newer guys.
Yeah.
But and sometimes other crew members, they're going to find a guy that they target on the ship, or they just, he's the one that gets the brunt of the the razzing or whatever. And I had a couple situations where I ended up doing some informal counseling on the ships, on one of the boats. It's the way it is. You're dealing with people out there, and they do the best they can. But I worked with some great leadership, and there was one of the commanders. We were at the table one night in the wardroom having dinner, and this guy was really good at generating discussion among his officers.
Yeah.
And this was back in 2010, 2011, maybe 2012. China wasn't really the big. I mean, they were big, but they weren't as big of a presence as they are now in 2024.
Yeah.
And he had enough foresight. I think about this today. This guy had enough foresight to kind of ask the crew what they thought about China and what was going on, and what they thought about the future of, the power balance. He would have discussions like that.
Yeah.
He would just come up with these questions, and I think the officers loved it. They all responded, and we had some great discussions in there. So, in terms of my own life, I think I learned a lot about just being fair with people, being strong with people, and using your sense of humor as much as you possibly can.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know I've had sit-downs with guys that I've served with, and, again, we've gone through, the questioning of, we wanted to know exactly the feeling with everybody to get their understanding and their feeling with the higher ups, as well as ourselves. we would go through those questions and saying, hey, how do you feel about, your upper echelon? What do you think? What are your kind of what are the concerns, and what are your non-concern things of, that you're, happy that you're with this unit, or with this squad, you know, as well as, do you want to, move to another squad to see how they act, and how they train, how they get together. Sometimes we would do that, and just move guys around just to get them an idea and a sense of kind of feeling on how everybody else works. Because again, the way the military teaches you and how they want you to teach the newer enlisted is, you need to know two people above's jobs as well as two people's jobs below, just so everybody knows and knows how to handle those positions, as well as, they know what needs to happen just in case, that person above is, no longer there.
Right.
You know, so totally get all that. Which comes now to, again, my third question to you is, what are some of your valuable lessons that you've learned from your time working with the military, with the Coast Guard? What are some valuable lessons you've learned from that, and how did you apply it to your role as a parent as well as a spouse?
Well, I think that I didn't know much about the military before I started that gig back in 27. I was not in the military when I was a younger man.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of friends who were in the military, but when this opportunity presented itself, I found it really interesting because it gave me an opportunity to learn about not only the Coast Guard, but like I said, I worked with Army and National Guard and as well. And I think one of the things I learned is that it takes a special person to be in the military. It's not, the military, people in the military sometimes get a bad rap, but I walked away from my experiences, and I'm thinking now more about my time on land, teaching from 2007 to 2010, than I am about being on the cutters. Because a lot of the guys I taught on land were Army guys, and a lot of them had spent time in Afghanistan and some of those other not so pleasant places over on the other side of the Atlantic. Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things I learned is that, a lot of those guys went into the service because they felt their country was being threatened after 9/11.
Yeah.
And they thought it was the right thing to do. And then when they came back, some of them, I never saw I never met anybody when I was working with Army that weren't proud of what they did. I mean, they all came back, and they knew that they had to be there, and they came. Not all of them were happy about being over there, but I think there was some pride about being over there. And I just saw incredible strength, Doug, incredible strength and commitment to values and commitment to other people. And I guess in terms of relating it to my own relationships with my family, stability and security is really important. And I was really glad to know that such quality, fine people were taking care of this country back then. And I'm sure they are today too, or trying to. It's probably a little bit more difficult today with all going on, but
I mean, it's again, we all, in the military, we all live, by, our values, which they teach you in the military, which again, as being in the Army, we had the Army values, which again, some of these values, they may name it a little bit differently, but, again, it all breaks down to the same kind of values. It's the whole, what they call it, if you just go right down the line on it, it spells out leadership. It's loyalty, it's our duty, it's our respect, it's the selfless service, it's our honor, it's our integrity, and it's our personal courage. Those are the things that we live by in the service. And, again, it's only, a certain percentage of Americans, like I've said this, in almost a lot of my shows and stuff like that, or even in the as a speaker anywhere. I tell this is how I live my life. This is how I will raise my kids, how I will teach them as they are getting older. These are the values they need to live by. And only in America, only a certain percentage will join the armed forces, that
Right.
will become a part of the brother and sisterhood, of being family members in arms.
Yeah.
So again, those are the things that we live by. Those are the things that when we join, those are what we live by and what we swear by and what we will, die, by is being those values. And again, I may go on with it, but it's in America there's only like 3%. I think it's even down to like 1% of Americans actually join the armed forces. But back during World War II, I think it was up to like 11%.
Yeah.
And so again, it's crazy. But those are the values that we live by, and those are what we are taught and trained when we get in.
I guess one of the things that concerns me about today is that I understand some of those recruitment numbers are down,
Yeah.
and I'm hoping that we have enough good people in this country to fill those ranks, in case we need them, which we're probably going to need them at some point.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're gonna need the numbers again. The question is, are we gonna get are the recruiters gonna be able to get the numbers?
Yeah.
It may not even be, the recruiter's fault. It goes back to how us parents have to raise our kids and to be
Yeah.
able to show them what what it is to being a U.S. citizen, what it is to being, part in this country, what you need to be doing, and how you should be living, and how you should be supporting everything for this democracy. Jesus, I can't even speak right now. Democracy. But it's how we need to be able to be Americans. And understand that, nothing in this world will come free. Even though when I was a kid, we got free cookies at the store, they don't do that anymore, but nothing in this world will ever be free, and it should
Right.
never be handed out to anybody. You should have to work for what you get, and that's it.
I agree, and I think there is an inherent pride. I think people who work in any public service, whether it's the military or first responders or whatever, there's a certain amount of pride that you can take away from the fact that you're sacrificing part of your life
Yeah.
for the service of your country, and that's something to be proud of.
Yeah.
And I know not everybody has the ability or the gumption to do it.
Yeah.
And I think those people who decide to make that leap and make that commitment for 3 years or 6 years, whatever they want to commit to, that's admirable. And I think that, and I think it, going back to your discussion about values, I wonder, I don't know, I was reading the other day about the greatest generation, and values were plentiful back then. And in today's world, I worry about values, and I worry about, I'm not sure if people are committed to those values you mentioned as they were back then.
I don't think they are. Again, it's something that I look at. You know, rather if you do join or you don't join, you know, I'm not shaming anybody that doesn't want to join, because it, you know, you as an individual need as an individual to be able to understand and want to join.
Yeah, personal choice.
Correct. You know, should there be a mandate that everybody in the U.S. should join and spend a 2-year or a 3-year contract? Is another thing I kind of personally think there should be, just to give each individual an understanding on, you know, this is how you should be acting towards each other. This is how you should be working together. It gives people the structure. I was a hellraiser when I was a kid. Not gonna lie about it. I gave my grandparents a hell of a ride. But in the same token, you know, after joining and being in, I kind of was like, wait, yeah, I have a sense of, you know, purpose and, you know, duty that I'm doing, and this is gonna take me places. And, you know, lo and behold, here I am, you know, a father of 5, you know, kids and everything.
Whoa.
I'm just teaching them how they need to be. You know, are my kids perfect? No. You know,
No kids are.
no.
Well, I'm the father of 2 daughters, and they're significantly probably more older than yours. Mine are 27 and 31, but they were little when they were young girls. They were young women when I went out. When I first started to travel with the Coast Guard, and I went home that day after talking to Terry, and we had a long family discussion about whether or not they, you know, what they thought about me going out at sea, and you know, the sad thing about my situation is I ended up getting separated when I was at sea, and that had nothing to do with being at sea, but it happened, you know,
It happened to me. I mean, I've gone now.
Yeah.
I'm into my marriage, my 3rd marriage.
It's tough, man, and you're out there. You know, I think a lot. I really think part of me, you know, I might have signed up for those you know, those cutter patrols to kind of, I don't know. It changed me. It changed me in ways. It changed me for the good. I think it changed me for the good. But I don't, like I said, that wasn't the catalyst for what happened in my marriage. But
Yeah.
you know, when I was out there, it was really. I missed my girls. I missed my family. I'm sure you do. You know, when you were out, it's incredible the emotion. And I'll just tell you this quick story. I was out in I think it was 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
2012. I was out at sea with the Coast Guard cutter Campbell, and
Yeah.
we were in the North Atlantic. And I got an email from my oldest daughter telling me that my ex-wife, my wife at the time, was at hospital with my youngest daughter, who had been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
Yeah.
Now I'm 500 miles away. I can't get back immediately.
Yeah.
But it all worked out. But you know, the heartache I felt not being there, not being able to just, you know, to get in a car and drive up to the hospital, that had an effect on me.
No, I can get it. I can just imagine. You know, I have 2 daughters. Yes, they're probably, one is probably almost a little more than half the age, because my oldest daughter is 13. You know, my youngest daughter is 11. So, you know, my oldest son it will be 16 this year.
So yours are young. You've got young kids.
I do. My youngest is will be 7 here shortly, in February. So, you know,
great.
it's the stuff that the stuff that I've always had and had to deal with. Again, it's been a certain way, and unfortunately, you know, being in the service and, being gone for this long, or if we're gone for, whatnot for however long, you kind of get of a feeling with yourself and saying, sometimes you look at it and say, well, I'm better off to just go and take this 30-day deployment somewhere
Yeah.
and go and do that instead of dealing with, maybe, stuff that you're dealing with at home. So you're trying to
Yeah.
just put your mind at a different spot than what it really should be trying to focus
Yes,
on.
sir.
But then sometimes it's like, really, do you want to focus on something that, it's never the kids. It's going to be, yourself and, like mine and my ex-wife. It was always, those types of things. It was like, I just didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah. I was the same way.
And that's just a lot of the guys. That's a lot of them. They look at it and they say they're better off. They would rather be somewhere where they were deployed, which a lot of them felt better to being deployed in, Iraq or Afghanistan, or out into the Persian Gulf or whatnot, than being at home, because they felt better, and they felt sometimes they felt they had in their head like they felt safer.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
It really is, and I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to that I've served with. That's the mentality of what they thought. Again, I did the same thing myself. I put myself as like, I feel better doing this than being at home.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of a sad point, but again, in the military, that's how we looked and how we kind of shaped ourselves. And that.
Well, it's funny. That makes me think of the camaraderie in the military. I wasn't really part of the military, but I made some really, really close relations from those people that I still keep in contact with.
Yeah.
In fact, I reached out to a guy today who was my first student on the Coast Guard Cutter Spencer. He took an independent study with me, and also signed up for 2 other courses. And he's a realtor now. He's been retired for some time from the Coast Guard. And he's a realtor in North Jersey, and he's real successful. But you know what makes him successful, Doug?
Yeah.
He was recently recognized for all the community work he did in his town.
Yeah.
Like helping homeless, helping vets, helping people, get back on their feet, or, all sorts of stuff.
Do you know what his name is?
Yeah, Robert Seaman.
Okay.
And I would love to get you hooked up with him.
Okay, yeah, no, absolutely. Feel free.
Yeah. He's an amazing guy, amazing young man.
There was a guy that I went through basic and all that with, and he was from New Jersey. Not the guy that I was talking to you about a little earlier before we got on here, but he his last name was Contreras. He was a realtor. He started doing a lot of big development and stuff in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And he picked up his life. After he signed up, he told me, he says, I'm also going through a divorce. I said, why are you going through a divorce if you're a big, successful developer? Well, my wife's not happy that I joined the military. I'm like, are you serious? So she's divorcing you? And he's like, yeah. He's like, but you know what? I don't care. I'm like,
yeah.
Good for you. But
wow.
On the same token, sorry.
Yeah.
But, that.
Well, it's just I met such great people who I still, Jim Spots. I don't talk to Jim a lot, but I can send him a text anytime and he'd answer within 5 minutes. He's just one of those type of guys.
Oh,
and I'm sure I think the brotherhood and the sisterhood, the people that I met in the Coast Guard, like I said, that's just such a tight group. And the Coast Guard's a small enough service where you can go pretty much, if you're in there for a while, you can pretty much go anywhere in the country and see somebody you know.
Oh, and if you don't,
and I'm sure you've had that experience too.
Oh, absolutely. And if you don't know them, and you both say, "Hey, I'm a veteran," they're more than likely to say, you know what, come on over, come on hang out with us.
No doubt. No doubt.
It's like, holy cow, I didn't know you until now, but you know
That's
what,
family.
you felt the same as a family member saying, you know what,
Yeah.
I've known you long enough, let's go. And that's just
That's so true.
it is. And you know,
I wasn't even part of the military, and these people, when after I finished my last patrol, about 3 months later, they came to me and said, "Hey, Scott, we want to make you an honorary chief petty officer." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yep, we want to recognize what you did out there for on those cutters for 14 patrols," and it was one of the most proud moments of my adult life, standing there out there at the base in Boss with my family and friends, and it was really cool. I was honored.
and I
I was
mean,
honored to be a part of that service.
and you will always be a part of that family, and you will
Yeah,
always be
man.
a part of the military, brothers and sisters in arms, family, because again, you've experienced what we go through on a day-to-day basis. You've gone
Yep.
through it, you've seen it, and you will always be a part of it, with no doubt.
I'd like to think so.
Oh yeah, I will tell you, you're more than welcome. Anytime you're up here, give me a shout. We'll go cook right on the grill.
Likewise, brother. Likewise.
Again, it's how we feel and how we interact with one another. I'm as I got out of the service, and again how I've met Julie with Homeland Heroes Foundation. Since then was on my progress of starting my own nonprofit organization, which again I help veterans with everything from being homeless to as well as if they're dealing with PTSD and stuff like that,
Yeah.
Or they're down on their luck and they need something. That's what I'm there for. I've got a board now. Everything is being finalized. I've got, the people working on it who, they are amazing and donating their time to helping me finish up the rest of this nonprofit paperwork.
That's great.
But, we run an event every year throughout the summer, from spring to summer. So from, June till usually October, November, we do what we call track day for veterans, and we bring veterans out to the track to spend the day out on the track with the race car teams, and you get to
Nice.
you get to experience it all from head to toe. You get to experience. You get the shirts. You get the tickets going in. You get to hang out with the drivers and the pit crew.
That's great.
You get to sit in the race car. It goes into like you're eating with the race car drivers and stuff. You're listening to them on the headset, and as they're talking and communicating, you can hear the spotter talking to the driver saying, oh, you're 4 cars back, 5 cars back. They're right up on you. They're right on your tail. They're right up next beside you. They're half a car length ahead of you now.
Cool.
You're hearing it all. And then I get sometimes if they want, I get them hooked up with another individual who then has a driving experience where the veteran can either drive the car, it's a sprint car, or they get to ride the passenger seat.
Nice.
And that, again, is an experience that is 100% free to them. Just like
Yeah.
the track day for veterans, it's free to them. And then, it's passed on. And then, again, it's something that I've wanted to do and be able to do. And sometimes these veterans will get to be as a grand marshal, which I've talked.
Oh, nice.
I've talked to Julie about this, and it's one thing that we may bring into here with Homeland Heroes Salute podcast.
Boy, that'd be great.
Oh, it would. It would be amazing, and I can't tell you how many veterans I've already brought and have experienced it. I've even brought a Gold Star mother to one of the races.
Oh wow, Doug.
Excuse me. And she had a phenomenal time.
I
She,
bet.
and she had to go to work the next morning, and where the race was at, it was like a 3 hour drive home. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel bad. She goes, no, it's fine. I said, if you want, just put your seat back and go to sleep. I said,
Yeah.
I'll just wake you up when I get to your house and drop you off. She's like, oh, I appreciate it. No sooner did I drop her off, she was like, yeah, I've got 2 hours of sleep I can get in before I got to go to work.
Oh.
I said, well, I'm so sorry. She goes, no. She goes, this is a time that I'm gonna remember just like I remember my son. And I still speak to her still to this day, just like all the other veterans. I'm always on the phone
Wow.
with them, and I'm always checking up on everybody, and she's always, yes, thank you. It's been an experience, that I will never forget. You're doing a wonderful thing, and I said, you're very welcome, and I enjoy it because, again, it means a lot to me as a veteran helping out other veterans,
I
and
can
that's what it's about. And again, that's what Homeland Heroes Salute podcast is about, is helping out all the veterans that we can, because this is a part of Homeland Heroes Foundation, which Julie founded. It's something that hits home for her, where she feels the need to be able to help, and she does. Her and her team and the board of directors and all that do an outstanding, amazing job, hands down. Everybody that I've put in contact to go and talk to her, or they needed something, absolutely never turned away a veteran.
That's great, man.
She's always helped everybody else.
She sounds like a wonderful person.
She really is, and I know she puts her and her team of all the volunteers. They put all their effort into it, and they do a lot. And I can't tell them thank you enough, because it's absolutely amazing, and it's moving. It's rarely, for me, it's kind of almost sometimes makes me want to kind of just start having just crying a little bit, because it's what she's doing is absolutely amazing.
That's great,
It's
Doug.
emotional. Which again, it brings me to my fourth question to you is, how do you navigate the unique dynamics of being a civilian working in the militaries, with the military components, and working with the military veterans, and also being a family man? What struggles did you or strategies did you use to maintain a connection with your spouse as well as your kids, and the demand that they put onto you with your career?
Well, I'm glad to say that even though I was deployed quite a bit, I managed to maintain a good relationship. After the separation, my relationship with my daughters took a hit. I was still at sea,
Yeah.
but I was emailing them every day. I was talking to them when I could, and I knew it was really important for me to stay in touch, not only with my daughters, but also with my soon-to-be ex-wife, because she's the mother of my kids, and
Yeah.
it was important to get as much for her to know what was going on with me, and for me to know what was going on with them.
Yeah.
But I guess the bigger issue for me, that was an issue. But my parents, when I was out at sea, they were both in their 80s, and you never know when you're out at sea what's going to happen to people that you love.
Yeah.
And I made a point to stay in contact with them. They were not computer savvy at the time,
Yeah.
and didn't really, they weren't emailing, but they had a machine in their house that would receive emails. It was the only one I ever saw, to tell you the truth. But so I would send them emails about every day just to let them know what I was doing, and I
Yeah.
couldn't hear anything back because they didn't have they didn't have a way to send emails. But whenever I got to port or something, I would call them, and it was very important for me to maintain those connections with my kids
Yeah.
and my parents, because they needed to know that I was okay, and I needed to know that they were okay. But
Yeah.
that's, as I said earlier, I think the hardest part was just being away from people that I love.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is, and again, that comes down to the whole military, sense of understanding, what us men and women go through, being in the services, what we had to deal with on a day to day basis, and what we go through. It's something that you got to see again, and understand those challenges. But it's absolutely challenges and struggles that we go through,
Yeah.
and you experienced it as well. And again, it's the keep in contact with the kids and your loved ones, your spouses, could be your parents, grandparents, because again, like you said, is that you really don't know what's going on with them. You can tell them what's going on. Hey, this is what you're going through, which technology has changed and progressed. But again, sometimes those as people will see that we may not have the FaceTime and stuff like that, or the Zoom calls and stuff like that. Some of those things didn't really happen at every base that you went to, or every deployment you went on. You may not have had all those amenities. You may have only had to do the handwriting of letters, because again, not everything had all that stuff.
Right.
Again, even like being downrange, it's like you may not have a store to go, like a shop at, or the aphids trailer to be able to go in and say, oh, I want this, you're grabbing that. You didn't have that luxury again, because again,
Right.
you might have been at a fob that didn't, it was a small one that didn't have any of that. You might have been at an outpost or something like that. Where
Right.
again, you wouldn't have those luxuries of those things until you got to another base or another fob that might have had that. When you have that kind of downtime, say 3 or 6 months into your deployment. But again, it's those luxuries, the luxuries / amenities, you don't have access to all the time, which then it's important to stay in contact as much as you can with your family by any means necessary.
Exactly.
So which then again, that goes into my next question with it is, can you share any specific moment or experience in your time working with the military that you've had that's had a profound impact on you and your life and your family?
Yes. I was in a situation where I was towards the end of my patrols. I was pretty stressed out, and I was trying to figure out if I wanted to continue. This was probably the end of 2012.
Yeah.
And I'd probably been at sea more time. I'd probably been at sea more. It was pretty close. I'd been at sea a lot.
Yeah.
About as much time as I'd been on land in 2012, I think. And I was tired. And I remember Christmas 2012. I was home, but I had just gotten home like Christmas Day. I'd flown out of Gitmo or something. We had been around Cuba, Guantanamo Bay, and I was on the Tahoma, and the Tahoma had to leave, and I wanted to get home for Christmas, so I had arranged with the crew I'd arranged with the Coast Guard to fly out of Guantanamo Bay back into Boston.
Yeah.
And there was a situation that I had to. I was just feeling incredibly lonely. I remember sitting in that hotel or motel on the base, and I actually didn't get home till after Christmas because it was like Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, and I was sitting there just incredibly lonely and feeling. I mean, I knew I'd had a successful patrol. I had done the successful teaching. It had been a successful experience, but I wasn't really feeling like. I was just feeling really homesick and really lonely, and when I got home, my family was very supportive, and they wanted to know. I remember my girls ran to me when I got home, and they just wanted to know all about that patrol, and it just felt so good to be home. And I, at that point, I knew that I was coming to an end because I just didn't want to. I was tired,
Yeah.
I was tired of being out there, and unlike other people in the unlike people in the military, I could come, I could say, all right, I'm done,
Yeah.
And but when I was leaving when I left that patrol, when I got back and went back and to Endicott, and I told my bosses that I was getting ready to wind down,
Yeah.
and they said, Scott, we'd like you to do one more patrol. We got this kind of set up, and that last patrol really it was such a powerful patrol.
Yeah.
That a lot went on that I actually, I second guessed it. I thought, well, maybe I do need to stay in. But my family came to me, and my daughters came to me and said, we want you to stay home. We're tired. We need you.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I was good with it. But it had been a long haul. Great experiences, great people, really great people.
Yeah.
Some scary experiences, pretty profound experiences. I saw a lot of things in the Coast Guard that I saw a lot of things in those patrols that made me appreciate what I had in the United States. We were off the coast of Haiti, and we were far from Haiti when we saw a sailboat in about 85-degree heat with no wind, and there were about 120 people on board this boat, and we had to take them all on board our cutter and take them back to Haiti.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty miserable experience for me because I didn't know what was going to happen to these people after they got back.
Yeah.
And because they were trying to get out of the country, and then you take them back, you wonder what the Haitians are going to do to them.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to my girls about that whole experience and how tough that was for me, just watching them offboarding those people onto Haitian Coast Guard boats.
Was that the time that they had the hurricane out there, or the earthquake or something?
No, this was after that.
That was after.
The earthquake happened in 2009, 2010, and this was after that earthquake in Haiti.
Okay.
And I'm sure that earthquake was part of the reason people have been trying to get out of Haiti for years.
Yeah.
It's not a nice place, but all those kids, you're on a boat. It took us 3 or 4 days to get back to Haiti, or maybe 2 or 3 days. All these people are sitting out, they're being housed on the flight deck of the cutter with a canopy on top, and they're feeding them rice and beans, which is all good and well, but there's little kids on board and old people on board.
Yeah.
You kind of wonder what's going to happen to them.
Yeah. No.
The humanity of that whole experience. And the crew on that ship, they had mixed reactions about the Haitians. Some of them were really compassionate, and others were like, how people can be.
They're just some people can just be really, cold-hearted to people, and then there's others that are going to be warm-hearted, that are going to accept, individuals. And again, I accept everybody and anybody. I'm not cold-hearted. Again, it's it's a slippery slope with some of the stuff, but it just dealing with people, you gotta be a little bit of a sensitive. If you don't know them, you just gotta be able to work around it. But
Well, there's a difference between, to me, there's a difference between empathy and compassion. And I almost think that if you have too much compassion in some situations, you're going to get burned, you know?
yeah,
I mean, empathy is great. Empathy allows you to do what you need to do to keep people safe.
yeah,
But I think you have to kind of protect your heart when you're in the military, or when you're a first responder, or when
yeah,
you work in a prison. You kind of have to maintain a professional distance. And sometimes that was really hard for me, because you get close to these people when you're living and eating and teaching and working with them day in
yeah,
and day out for 30 to 60 days. You get close to them. I was a civilian on board. My job was to kind of to maintain professional distance. That was tough when we got into port
yeah,
after 11 or 12 days at sea, you know, and all you want to do is go out and have a beer and a hot meal with good people. And I didn't want to do it by myself all the time, you know?
yeah. No, absolutely. And as I was, because I was thinking the whole thing with Haiti, so which a lot of people know, the Be Like Brit and everything, from what they did, for what Brittany did during the whole that whole thing, and how she ended up losing her life, um, which then I was telling Jim about it. The family who who Brittany was part of, was Leonard Gangle, which my wife, it's her uncle. It's her uncle, I believe it is.
Yeah.
They're related, because my wife's grandmother, is a Gangle, who her name was Dottie Gangle, which that was, again, all part of their family. Which I didn't know this until after I was already married to my wife, now, and she was telling because she was telling me the whole story, and I'm like, I knew of the whole stuff that happened in Haiti. I said, but I never really kind of focused on it until my wife and her family was telling me about it. And I'm like, wow. And how he then now sold all this stuff, and him and his wife went through a divorce and whatnot after the death of their daughter. I was like, Jesus, this is crazy.
Tough place.
Yeah, it really is. And I've only been to Haiti once. Flew into Port-au-Prince, and then we took another flight from Port-au-Prince to a remote village somewhere, and it was years and years ago. It was a missionary trip with my church, and I was I was taken back from a lot of it, because I'm like, this was my first time, before getting into the service and everything. This was my first time getting out of the country and seeing something like this.
Yeah.
Now my brother, on the other hand, he's been to Cuba and stuff like that multiple times.
The military or
No.
missionary?
Missionary, which again, they don't per se like missionaries coming into Cuba and all this.
Right.
They don't. Yeah, I'm glad. Okay, yeah, this is gonna air. This will be airing beforehand, but oh yeah, but they go in as as individuals, as they're being just tourists. But yeah, it's crazy. And again, how the people in Haiti live, and first time getting right off the plane, getting out of there, and then everybody was like, the people that lived around or that were there, they would try to get money out of you, which it's for people to fall for it. People do. It's not really falling for it, but it's you give too much, because you will walk out of there with not a penny to your name. You can walk out of there with no shoes, no shirt, no nothing, because you gave it all away. You know. And then some of the places that we even went to, when we got to the village where we are at, people would be like, "Get on my back. I'll take you across the water, and get you across there, and you'll stay dry." You know, or hey, get onto the bus, and everybody's piling onto this little makeshift bus type deal, and hanging on from the outside.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, what's going on? And I'm like, just flabbergasted. I'm like, Jesus, this is like, this is crazy. But
yeah, third world, dude.
You know, it was an eye opener. It was a way to see things. I'm like, yeah, you would never see any of this in America.
Well, you know, that's the thing, man. You think things are tough here, and things are tough here in some areas, but you go overseas, like a place like Haiti or some of those other places that, you know, some of those places in East Africa or something.
Yeah.
They're tough. They're tough. Haiti, and you talk about, you know, I would love to know more about your brother's mission work down there, because I would think that he'd have that's a big challenge. Those people are pretty, you know, that's a tough country. You've got gangsters, you've got voodoos, you've got all sorts of stuff going on.
He came back last year, and he was sicker than a dog.
Really?
And I will tell you, it was he still deals with it. I just told him the other day. I'm like, dude, I said, you shouldn't go. You should give your time break. He's like, no, I'm going. I'm like,
wow.
Okay. I was like, just drink bottled water. He's like, that's what I do. I was like, what don't you do? And he's like, we eat everything that we bring, and you know, that's it. You know, other than the meat and stuff like that, they get there. They go out, I think, somewhere to eat one place, but it's a known place that they can go to. You know, and then they usually go to the beach one day. And
well, I would ask your brother. One of the things I would ask your brother is, who's running that country now? Because as I recall, they assassinated the president last year.
Yeah.
They never caught whoever assassinated the president of Haiti, I don't think. And I don't even know. I mean, it seems like a lawless place.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna have to ask him. And then I know my church that I used to go to, which I'm still in contact with them. They tell me all the time when they're going to other countries, because now they don't go to Haiti. They go. They've been doing a lot more missionary trips to. Where is it? Somewhere in Africa. I can't even think of the name of it. I'm trying to think. I'm not even trying to see if I can even find something on my. Let's see, Williams. What is it? Ron Williams, usually, I think. No, it's not in there. I'd have to look, cause maybe.
Yeah.
Paul Meadow. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, that's not even. But it's somewhere. But they again, they go and they do like 2 weeks into Africa, and they usually stay on a preserve area, and then they go and do things elsewhere, and they spend a day somewhere else to like do souvenir shopping and stuff.
Cool.
But yeah, I'll tell you, it's some of the places that I've been and I've now finally witnessed and seen, and I've got an understanding of a third world country. it gives you a better look at life than
Yeah,
what you would think if you've never been to a third world country.
absolutely.
And seeing how they live and seeing um, how they survive. Because again, it's a lot of it's just very different. I'll say.
Yeah.
You know. But this brings me to my question. My next question to you is, as I know we were talking before regarding the Army values and values of being in the service. You know, as a parent, how do you install the values and principles that you've learned? You know, as working close with the military. How do you install it into how do you really install it to your kids, and how do you encourage them to appreciate the sacrifice that the men and women of the armed forces have made?
Well, both my daughters are 27 and 31 now, and they have their own minds and their own ideas about things. But I really think that they're proud of my service. I think they're proud of what I did.
Yeah.
In fact, I know they're proud of it. Both of them stood there with me when I received that award as an honorary chief petty officer back in 2014. I have always tried. I was raised by good people,
Yeah.
and I think one of the reasons I appreciated working with the Coast Guard so much was because it was, a lot of their integrity, a lot of their leadership is based on values.
Yeah.
And I've always tried to impart those good values to my daughters. My ex-wife and I, despite our differences, we always prioritized our kids and tried to teach them integrity and kindness and compassion and just being good people and doing the right thing and being responsible and loving your country. One of my daughters, in fact, both my daughters they are very frustrated with government these days, but at the same time, I think they love their country and they understand that we are in a struggle situation right now, and I think that they are hoping like hell that things work out and they can continue to be proud of this country. But I think one of my youngest daughter in particular is struggling right now.
Yeah.
The political situation in this country doesn't make it easy for people, doesn't make it easy for a lot of people or everybody to be proud of what's going on right now.
No, I mean, yeah, it's so true, and it's a lot of people are still trying to. I know a lot of people are still trying to understand, the whole political background of a lot of stuff, because again, people get mixed information, which is bad in certain ways, because again, it confuses people. Just like again, when people try to give you misinformation on well, I know I kind of tiptoe around it a little bit, but misleading on gender identification. Again, there's only two genders, and that's male and female. Whatever else you think. To me personally, it's kind of different. It's nonsense, but again, it's only two genders, and if you're trying to tell a 6-year-old, for instance, like my son, you're trying to convince him and try to tell him that you can identify as anything you want, or you can identify your gender as anything you want. It's like, pump the brakes. Wait, don't confuse my kids, because again, you confuse kids or you confuse individuals of certain things. It kind of makes it hard for them to understand. It's like the understanding of the whole thing of behind of like right and wrong. If you try to confuse somebody the difference between right and wrong and say, well, it's okay to not tell the truth a little bit. It then says it's okay for you to lie. And it's not. So, again, that's where a lot of misinformation does get put out there because, again, people confuse people and it's not a good thing. And this whole with political stuff kind of causes a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And it puts a damper on a lot of stuff. And, really, anybody can be political whatever way they want because it's your opinion, it's your decision. But in the same token, it's like, we all just need to understand that we're all here to work with one another, not against each other, because that just is going to make America hard to,
Right.
really work together. So,
Yeah.
it's a sad reality that we're in, but again, that's because our leaders, some of our leaders are misleading each individual or individuals the wrong thing and not the right thing. So that's just
Well, the problem is with that, what may be wrong for some group of people may be right for other group of people. There's a lot of discourse and a lot of polarization in this country regarding. You just named one of the issues, gender identity. There's a lot of people who think there's various perspectives on that. But I think this is what makes me sort of sit back and wonder where things are going to go in this country because we're so polarized now.
Yeah.
I was in a store today and I was buying something and the total came up to be $19.63. And the cashier said, "Oh, 1963. I don't remember that year." I said, "Well, that was the year that JFK got shot, and back then, I think." And she said to me then, well, she said, "Oh, I bet a lot of people cried back." And I was telling them about when I was in first grade in 1963, and when that was announced on the TV, they filed us all out of school, put us on the bus, and then we went home. It was like early in the day.
Yeah.
And I remember walking in the house, and my parents were sitting at the kitchen table crying. And and I was telling this story at this market today, and the lady said, "Well, I wonder if anybody would cry if not everybody in this country would cry if Biden got, God forbid something happened to President Biden."
Yeah.
And that's a sad commentary. We don't the patriotism in this country, and it's just taking a hit. And I don't know if I wish that we were all as united as we were after 9/11, driving around with flags on our cars and stuff. But that I don't know if we'll ever see that again.
I totally agree with you on that because again, that's that's where a lot of people don't understand. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican, or if you're an independent. We all just need to be able to teach the right things, the right and wrongs of things, not try to read between the line and make, I really don't know how to explain it, but it's other than, just getting back to teaching the kids and everybody the difference between right and wrong and, good and bad and evil and, stuff like that. A lot of people can't tell, they don't understand, they may not know what happened in 1963. I know a lot of people that are younger generation, when you say, 9/11 or September 11th, they wouldn't put, some of them may not put two and two together. Some people can't even tell you how many stars are on the flag and how many stripes are on the flag.
Yeah. I know.
God forbid, tell you what the capital, of each state is or what each state is. I can tell you where I was, September 11th. I can tell you where I was. Again, that's something where they were telling people to go home, putting them on buses and sending you guys back home. because again, something was taking place. God forbid, they didn't know what was going on. And again, that's a day that we can kind of understand. I know when I hear December 7th, the first thing that pops into my head is Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Again, I was taught these things in school. I was told, this is what took place. Nowadays in schools, they're not teaching a lot of this stuff.
Not as much.
I mean, I just found out from my kids. I'm like, asking them. I'm like, hey, you guys learning cursive? They're like, cursive. I'm like, yeah, signing your name. Oh, we don't do that. We just print. I'm like, print? So you don't know how to sign your name? Yeah, and they show me, and they print their name. I'm like, no, that's not signing your name. Well, that's what we're doing. I'm like, oh, it's a come to Jesus moment. Here we go. Let's teach you this, because again, it's I've got to do it myself. I got to teach my kids this. Again, I feel bad. My kids are going through this. I feel bad. I don't know if we'll ever go back to the moment like September 11th or December 7th until another episode happens here in America that it may put us back to that, but I don't know.
I don't know either.
We had, Osama bin Laden, who gets, hunted down and killed. What were people doing when that happened?
Yeah.
A lot of people were back out on the streets, cheering for joy and everything. They had it on all the newses. Not anymore. They don't have anything really good on the newses. I don't even have cable TV. I can say I'm probably one of the Americans that don't have cable TV. I mean, a lot of people probably don't nowadays because, again, cable TV is more expensive than people share to really just want to have cable. But again, nothing really is good on cable TV. But I don't know. I hope Americans can get back to feeling the sense of pride of being an American. But unfortunately, until that happens again, we're so divided, and I don't understand why we can't just be back to being united. And that's why this country is called, United States of America. Should be united, not divided. We're so divided, and it's sad. But that brings me to my last question to you before we wrap this up is, how do you maintain a sense of connection with the guys you served with out on these cutters and stuff like that? How do you stay connected to them and, with those fellow veterans and even after the transitioning of getting, out of that line of work,
Well, I thank goodness for social media. I don't have a lot of daily contact with the people that I used to work with, but I do follow a lot of them. The gentleman I mentioned earlier, Robert Seaman, he and I stay in touch periodically.
Yeah.
Jim Spots, who the fine commander of the USCGC Tahoma, he and I exchange greetings when we can.
Yeah.
And there are a few others that I talk to every now and then. And sometimes out of the blue, I'll just get an email or a text from somebody who I used to work with or who I taught.
Yeah.
Thanking me for what I did, And in fact, I just got one of those right before Christmas. and those are always nice. And I like to reach out and talk to people who I used to be in, work with together in the Coast Guard, whether it was teaching or even some of the command. But
Yeah.
it's, social media helps. I'm not. I guess I'm not really great at that, but and I certainly don't keep in contact with everybody.
Yeah.
But time progresses. It's been 10 years since I wrapped nearly 11 years since I wrapped up my last patrol. And it's funny, Doug. A few years ago, I guess around maybe 2021, maybe before that, I had someone from Endicott reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to do another patrol on a Coast Guard boat. And this would have been, 7 or 8 years after I finished it. I thought about it, and I'm with a new woman now, and she did, she expressed that her wishes that I not do that.
Yeah.
And I thought, it would be really fun to do, but I thought it would probably be better if Endicott or some other school gave a younger person a chance to do that, because I had my fun.
Yeah.
I had my experiences. I learned a lot about the service. I learned a lot about the military in general. I learned a lot about don't ask, don't tell. I learned a lot about, the military Universal Code of Military Justice. Is that what it is?
Yeah, the UCMJ.
Yeah, UCMJ.
Yep.
I was fortunate enough to sit in on a couple math, they call them in the Coast Guard, where someone's disciplined
Yeah,
for doing
Article
something
15.
they shouldn't do.
What is it? Article 15.
Yeah, and I mean, I was privileged. I was a privileged person on board. I recognize that, and I'm grateful for it. I'm humbled by what I learned in the Coast Guard, and for that, I will always be grateful.
I still call people out on stuff when I see soldiers out and about, and I see them out of uniform. I'm like, AR 670-1. They're like, I'm like, yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
I'm like, get your hands out of your pockets. Well, why do they have pockets? Get your hands out of your pockets. That's what it's for you to think about not putting your hands in the pocket.
Well, I got to tell you, I met this guy. I met this one my second patrol was a Unitas patrol, and we ended up in South America. And it was a long patrol. It was actually a 30-day patrol because I had to fly back for my daughter's graduation. But it took 30 days to get down to Argentina, and we were down there, and we went out one night. I was out with a few first-class petty officers, and I'll never forget this guy. His name was Brian. And I said, Brian, what got you into the Coast Guard? He said, it was the Coast Guard or jail for me. He said, the judge looked at me and said, sir, young man, you either go into the service or I'm going to lock you up. And that's why I joined the Coast. I think he went into I think he was in it was in the Marines or Army before he joined the Coast. That's how he got into the service.
Yeah.
And, he sat there that night and told me that it was the best decision he ever made. He was so proud. And I watched him work. This is one of the guys, he was just charismatic. He was all over that boat, and he was good at what he did.
Yeah.
He was a boatsman. He was one of the boat drivers,
Yeah.
and a navigator, and he was so proud of his work. And I wondered, man, where he would have been had he taken the other route and said, you know what, I'm just going to go sit in jail for 30 days.
I think that about myself as well, because I was heading down a bad path. It was a destruction path, and I finally what I did to get out of it is because, again, I grew up in Daytona Beach, Florida.
Oh, you did?
Yes. So that's Party Central, okay?
Party, yeah.
I got into more problems than
Did you?
I can really explain and try to even tell you about it.
Did you join at 18?
Nope.
No?
Nope. I waited because I had some things pending that I needed to hopefully not go through to then be able to get in, because they were not going to give waivers for it. So I had to wait. So what I did is, again, me being stupid, the stuff that I got into was, I was a bouncer at a nightclub. I used someone's head to open up the door to throw them out. But I had a reason, but it wasn't a good enough reason. They pulled a razor blade, like a razor blade, that people would use to chop up stuff in Daytona Beach, to put it drugs. He tried to cut me with it. I knocked it out of his hands, and I was able to get him in the headlock and put him through the door, and they ended up hitting the wall and got a big gash right above his eye.
Oh.
He was knocked out unconscious for a couple of days. And the owner of the club had me to go sit all the way in the back in his office, and had to. I think the statute of limitations should be over, but he had to lie to the cop to pretty much. I mean, nothing happened to the guy. The guy, he ended up coming out of everything, and he was good.
Good.
Didn't pass away or anything, but again, I was being brought up. I was being brought up on charges and stuff, and until everything took place, they couldn't really prove anything unless they had witnesses and stuff like that, and a camera, which they have cameras, but he had to convince everybody that there was no cameras because he didn't want me to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Which,
wow.
Yeah. I mean, so I ended up finally, going down a dark path and trying to get myself out of it, and then I finally, after getting out of all that stuff, I packed up and I moved out of Florida, and I moved out west to Kansas. God forbid, why would anybody want to live in Kansas? There's nothing in Kansas. Well, that's where I wanted to be. That put me out of all trouble, put me not in a party central.
Yeah.
I turned myself around.
Good for you.
And that was I didn't join again, and I didn't join until the end of 2006 or so. But yeah, I had to wait until everything was cleared, and I was heading down a dark path, and
are you glad you joined?
I am 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Again,
that's great.
My grandfather was in. A lot of people in my family were in. So I'm kind of the legacy that of going in and joining. My brother didn't get the opportunity. He would have. Again, I know a lot of us veterans say this to people that say, "Well, I would have gone in." Well, he would have, but he had too many kids. When I mean too many kids, he has 11 kids.
Jeez.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
Yeah, he put kids before his life.
Yeah, I guess, huh?
But he loves them, and they're all grown up. They're all, well, except one. One's like, I think, is a junior this year. So.
That's great.
But again, he's in a good career. He works with the Volusia County Sheriff's Department down in Florida.
Nice.
And he does the work release program with the jail to allow the convicts that are going to be getting out soon. They put them onto these what they call buses, and they go out and work, and they do landscaping and stuff like that. So he works with those guys.
That's great.
He's been doing that for 11 plus years now. So
good for him.
Yeah. So, with all that being said, I mean, it's been a pleasure definitely having you on, Scott. I definitely would love to have you back on again. It's
I'd love it.
It's definitely even if it's not on Homeland Heroes podcast. Definitely would even have you on my own, my other podcast, which is Fubar Studios.
Well, Doug, I certainly appreciate the opportunity, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I don't have a lot of opportunities to talk about those days. I mean, sometimes I talk to them, probably to people who are tired of hearing the stories, but I'm sure you're like that too. You have so many stories from your days in the service, and
Yeah.
the memories are so vivid in some. But I'm just really happy that you gave me the opportunity to talk about them. I thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome, and it's been a pleasure. And I guarantee you, all the viewers are enjoying it. You know, so when the questions are coming in, and everything, that's where it's amazing to them, and because they're looking to it and they're getting an understanding. You know, I've met a lot of people through this.
That's great.
I just had Roy Benevito's daughter on just a week ago, which I'll tell you more about later on. And but again, it's been a pleasure speaking with you and having you on, Scott. And I'm gonna have the takeover crew to go ahead and take over the episode for us and have it with the ending. And so until next time, you guys, we'll talk to you later.
Thank you for supporting Homeland Heroes Salute Podcast. Please make sure to like and follow Homeland Heroes on all of your social media outlets. Homeland Heroes Salute Podcast is a Foo Bar Studios Sinister One co-production.